What is up, party people? We are back, ready to talk about Wandavision episode 6. I am your host for today, Jeffery Taylor, and we are the Grown A Geeks. I'm going to go around and talk to my lovely panel before we get started. First, you know him as our founder, Sam. Sam, say what's up to the people.
What's going on, everybody? How y'all doing today? Wandavision episode 6.
And then we are going to go to our next host. You know him as the host of the GAG on These Balls podcast. We have my man, Brent. Brent, say what's up to the people.
What's up, everybody? Be sure to check out the Grown A Geeks Sports Network on Facebook.
All right. That's some new info, hot off the presses for you guys. Please make sure to go check that out. If you like talking about sports, all sports, any sports, we're going to have some conversations for you over there. A couple of us going to be guests on Grown A Geeks moving forward so we can help grow that group and make GAG a worldwide movement. And last but definitely not least, we got my man, the fortune teller, the theorist. he probably has a garage full of red string so he can tie all his theories together. My man Will,
he's a
talk
living
to the people
right there.
You just don't know the half of it. Told you.
Has anybody actually seen his garage? That's what I want to know.
Wait for it. It's coming.
All right, guys. So, WandaVision, episode 6. Let's just start with initial thoughts. Like, how did this episode make you feel? Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? Did it blow your mind? Let's start with you, Brent.
Well, I going to just go flat out on record. I did not like the first 2 episodes. Ever since then, it's been a roller coaster of absolute wonder, and I cannot say like enough good things that Marvel had the vision to do something of this scale. And I absolutely love the episode and everything in it. I mean, it was breakneck speed. You were getting a whole bunch of new information, but all of the new information that we got from this episode kept leading into more and more questions that I can't wait to break down with our excellent panel of, my peers. So very, very excited for all the things WandaVision episode 6.
Will, initial thoughts on episode 6. How did it make you feel?
This was a blast of information as far as I was concerned. There's a lot of questions and stuff being posed. Again, just like the way they've been doing the whole thing. More questions and stuff like that as they're giving us slightly more answers. So I'm just enthralled at this point. Like, I am sucked all the way in.
Tight. Sam? Talk to the people.
I liked so much about this episode. This episode actually made me kind of go back and rethink some of the stuff I thought I knew and wanted to believe, and I appreciate that. I'm always trying to like really figure out what's going on. This episode made me like really sit back and like just appreciate what was on screen. And as a result, kind of made me go back and look at some previous episodes a little differently. So I was very happy about that.
Tight. And for me, I definitely am in the same boat. I mean, I really, really enjoyed this episode. Definitely watched it twice just to go back and like try to get some Easter eggs. But then I found myself so enthralled in like the drama and the action and everything that was happening that I didn't get no Easter eggs. My Easter basket was very empty by the end of the episode because I was just like, that was just so good. The acting is so good. And I think that's one thing we haven't talked a lot about on the show is just like the acting itself is being done so well. Yeah. The emotion, and especially with like a show like this where there's so many questions, so much mystery, you don't want somebody giving it away with how they're acting a scene out or giving it anything away with how they're doing stuff. So I definitely want to take a minute to take my hat off to the actors themselves, because as the relationships and things are evolving in the show, I think everybody's doing a really, really great job with like conveying like how those relationships between the different characters are growing and moving.
They're using so many like little subtle things, like
for
shoulder movement, hand movement, like just the way they dress, the way they talk and interact with people. Like I can't say enough good things about that point. It's like everyone's doing such subtle things. It's not giving everything away, but like you're moving the scene along beautifully every time.
And even just thinking about some of the like ridiculous costumes and makeup some of the characters have to wear at different times. You know, like Paul Bettany, for instance, like the look of Vision is almost so ridiculous for him to be doing the kind of acting that he's doing, where you really start feeling for this like burgundy and green synthezoid, and you really start sympathizing with him, even though like off top he kind of just looks ridiculous. So definitely a testament to the writing and the acting happening on the show as well. So before we move on to our next section, I definitely want to make sure I swing back around and say, please make sure to follow Grown Egg Geeks on YouTube. Smash that like button, smash that subscribe button. That's my YouTuber voice. I've been watching a lot of YouTubers practicing for hosting this week. So, but please, like, it definitely helps us out. It helps us get some prominence.
Hit the bell so you get notified when new episodes are uploaded.
Yep. Hit the bell, smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. Make sure you get all this amazing content right here, right when it's ready for you, when it's piping hot.
Hot and fresh.
No, but for also, if you were looking for just audio versions, we're definitely on Anchor FM as well as a few other platforms. There's some QR codes. I don't know which one is in the right corner, but one of them takes you to our Facebook group, and one of them takes you to Anchor FM, right?
Actually, one is YouTube and one is Facebook.
Awesome.
We don't have one for Anchor yet, but you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and then where I personally listen to us on Spotify.
Tight. This is my first time hosting, so please bear with me on all the
all good.
Doing way better than I did.
All those details.
Just smash, you know what? Smash that like button. Smash that subscribe button. I'm good with it right there.
Hulk, smash that button.
All right, so let's jump right into the recap. And this section of the show, we're really going to focus on trying to go through the show, just like kind of scene by scene, digesting things, because I know we're all big time comic book nerds. We watch all the Easter egg videos, and we get in a show like this, and it's like a free for all, and we're jumping back and forth, and then at the end we're like, wait, did we talk about the episode, or did we just talk about our theories and how we felt and stuff? So we want to make sure we get into like the meat of the episode and kind of address how we feel about different things in that way. So obviously we know this show is starting off as a homage to sitcoms throughout history, and each episode has been a focus on a different decade of sitcoms thus far. So obviously last episode we had our very special episode set in the 80s, which was truly emotional and left us on a cliffhanger. And this episode we are in the 90s, and of all the shows,
a little bit in the early 2000s.
Yes, 90s, early 2000s. And it's kind of like, of all the shows that we would probably have thought of as quintessential like 90s shows, 2000 shows, sitcoms that they would have based it on, I definitely was not expecting Malcolm in the Middle. But such a good choice, I felt. How did you guys feel about that choice to kind of go with that kind of irreverent, angsty, late 90s, early 2000s sitcom model as like a vehicle for this episode?
Well, pertaining to everything that like they have going on, they built up through the first couple episodes, listening to the words in the song that they played, it's like, let the chaos take you, just see where things go. Like, they really built in everything perfectly, and Malcolm in the Middle was the perfect, I guess, sitcom that they wanted to go with, because Malcolm in the Middle was just pure, unadulterated chaos. And, like, the kids were keeping everything together, which, where we're at currently in the episode, that seems to be where we're at in correlation to Wandavision.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else got any Malcolm in the Middle thoughts, theme song, feelings?
So yeah, that one really stuck out to me, and even during while watching the intro, immediately picked up on the Malcolm in the Middle vibe, and some direct comparisons that came to mind. Um, the only thing missing is the youngest child. I forget what his name was on the show, but
Dewey.
Dewey. Dewey's the only one missing from this setup because you have the mom, the dad, you have the two brothers, and then you have the older brother. But in this case, it's the uncle. So it's still the same kind of dynamic. And it was very, very fitting. And of course, given the. It even makes more sense as you get through the episode. As you see later on in the episode, there's some key parts there that really play more into why the show goes like this. And also, when you think about even the parents, you know, Vision is a very straight laced, very this is how it is, plain kind of individual, and the mom was like walking chaos, and that was one of the key points of the show. And given what we're seeing here on screen, I just thought that was a perfect choice.
Yeah. It was almost like, too, on Malcolm in the Middle, it was like the dad was straight laced because when he got chaotic, it was like a wrap. He was like a time bomb.
Yeah.
So he kind of had to keep it together. And it's like Vision is like the same way. He has so much power. He is so powerful. Hence why Sword is like so focused on trying to get him back. Like if he decided to just like go ham, I mean, he's basically like Ultron Jr., but just with a conscience.
Adamantium body, so he is virtually indestructible.
I think in the MCU it's vibranium, but
Vibranium.
Yes.
Yep. Actually, it is vibranium body. They got it from. It was when what's the Claw? He's got the one arm. He ends up coming back.
Ulysses Claw.
Yeah. So that was when they got the vibranium to actually make him. So he's got a vibranium body. So he is virtually indestructible. And with the stone, the Mind Stone, you know what I'm saying? Like we saw, if he decides to like shoot that blast, that's power move right there. So yeah, a lot of power.
Yeah, I really did. I thought it was a great choice for Malcolm in the Middle as well. It was because it was unexpected, and I think that even with like the different types of sitcoms that they're doing, and with us kind of getting that revelation in the last episode that Wanda is essentially trying to create paradise. This is with Pietro showing up in the last episode and her being shocked by it, which is a little weird because if she's the one that's making all this happening from our vantage point, there shouldn't be anything happening that she doesn't know about or that would catch her off guard or would shock her. So we went from the nice buttoned up sitcoms of like Dick Van Dyke, Bewitched, the
Full
Brady
House.
Bunch, Full House, Ties, and now it's like Malcolm in the Middle. It's like shit is hitting the fan, things are getting out of control, and it really like kind of made me feel like, okay, so what's going to be like the parallel between this and like the rest of the episode, and like what's actually happening with Wanda. So I felt like that choice in general was just like a really, really great choice. And then even moving into the episode, we start off with the boys. Billy comes down the stairs. He's got on the classic Wiccan costume that like everybody who is a comic fan was probably just like, oh my God, he's wearing it. You know what I mean? It's like the moments we've been like waiting for.
Don't
And,
judge me.
talking directly into camera. No judgment, Will. I know you're waiting on it.
No, it's one of those moments like, oh, he did
Yes.
it. He did it.
Yeah. And, seeing Billy talk directly to camera, which is interesting because when you think about like who's seeing this, it's like, are they like in the sword tents now, just like this little boy is just talking right to us and like telling us the show, but like, the breaking the fourth wall device that, we've seen used sparingly, obviously,
Like
is a plot
Deadpool
device
primarily.
in this episode, for sure.
And to that fourth wall,
go ahead.
To that fourth wall point, it had not even occurred to me because you get like they do such a good job with the intros. I forgot for just a moment that I'm still watching a show in a show.
Yeah.
That, when when that little boy was talking through the screen, it was one of those like fourth wall I mean, at this point we're now breaking 16 walls or something by the transitive
Yep.
powers. Like it's ridiculous. He's not talking to me, the viewer at home. He's only talking at best to Sword. And
Yeah.
even then, he's not talking to Sword because he doesn't know that Sword's there watching. So he's just
being guided by the trope of that sitcom.
just the meta aspect of how they've done the show. Because like even with the intro song, like you get so caught up in what you're watching there that you forget sometimes, and it's not until they change something in the aspect ratio or they just come out that you are like, oh yeah, that's right. This is a that's right. That's not what's really happening. There's a whole other thing going on.
Yeah, because they went like almost cinematography shot for Malcolm in the Middle. They literally took all the camera angles, all the devices, all the sides, everything that made that show.
Yeah.
Literally copied and pasted it and like, hey, here's WandaVision. Ta-da.
Yeah. Like we went from multicam to single cam, which is like, because we live in kind of like a single cam comedy dominated world right now, it doesn't feel that drastic. But like back then, I just remember it being like, why are these shows like so like in your face and like the camera's moving and shit? And so I think like, even like those choices too, like somebody had to be like, we should make it a single cam style show so that it's not just like a multicam sitcom, to show the differences between the two. So yeah, the framing of this episode has been really, really interesting. And I think if everything about these episodes, I'm personally kind of tying it back to like Wanda's state of mind and her like control that she has on what's going on. This definitely feels like now we're moving from a show where the cameras are fixed. There's the fourth wall where like either the studio audience is or would be, and we're all acting in this space. Now we've moved into like, we can move around this world, we can move around this neighborhood however we feel, because we're not like limited to like how can we set up this shot for like a multicam shot, and how can we do all that other stuff. So another good thing is like, I think a big thing in this opening scene that we're seeing is like the new dynamics of the family. Billy definitely mentions like, mom and dad have been like different since Uncle Pietro came. We see Billy and Tommy kind of interacting, and Billy's like the good one and Tommy's the rebel. And then even going back to the cue card on the not the cue card, but the title card of the sitcom, it's like Tommy and Pietro on one side, like roughhousing, and then Billy and Wanda on the other side, kind of like posing for the picture. And there's Vision caught in the middle of it all. So, what do you guys kind of feel about like the family dynamics that we saw in that opening scene? I'm gonna kick it to you, Brent, to talk about that.
Well, like the family dynamic that I thought was also interesting is that Agnes somehow managed to make it in to everything that was going on with all the whole crazy chaos intro. And then like she had naughty written right across her pants right on the backside. So I thought that was a nice play that it, as it is for this part of the episode, it portrays to who everyone believes she is without directly referencing anything that she has done or been doing throughout the show.
And making it time relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the cool thing about the time frame is that this is a Halloween special. If you remember, Avengers Endgame apparently ended in like early October. So you add 3 weeks onto that, 3 weeks later, you'd be basically at Halloween. So you could have a definitive timeline for where things are actually taking place pertaining to where the Marvel Cinematic Universe is at this time.
For sure. Will, Pietro, he's here. He's in the mix. What's up? What were your kind of thoughts with like the first scene with us seeing Pietro interact with the family, obviously first with the boys, and then kind of seeing his dynamic when Wanda and Vision are kind of communicating with each other.
I think looking at Pietro and so with that, he's clearly separated from them. Like he still doesn't mesh well. You'll notice that when the boys are talking and stuff like that, and it's like, I don't know, maybe he's a vampire or something to that effect. Which I'm gonna bring that up later and so with that, but they're still standoffish from him. Like, they don't really know how to respond to him, and it seems that throughout the course of conversations, so that he either interjects himself in and so at that to kind of let things happen a certain way, so at that, or he's interrupting, and so that in that case as to whatever Wanda's trying to get across or figure out, he just kind of throws himself in the mix. So yeah, I think he's there, but he's not there in the manner that she wants to see her brother in, so to speak.
Yeah, it's almost weird. It's like the long lost family member. And I think in the age of the internet, we don't have like as much of that because it's just like, oh, this is my like random ass third, fourth cousin. Like we're friends on Facebook. I see their kids. I know what they're up to. But like right. But I remember being a kid and just like a random cousin that you ain't really know comes to stay because they like rolling through town or whatever, and you come down on Saturday morning, they sleep on the couch, and you're like, man, I'm supposed to be in here watching cartoons. I don't know. I don't know how long they're gonna stay. Maybe I'm just giving myself away, but I definitely had that experience like with family, like somebody who I don't know, but like my grandmother or whoever I'm staying with at the time is like really close to, but I ain't really heard about this person. Like this is not a person that gets brought up when we like sitting around telling family stories a lot. And so it kind of you do wonder as a kid, like if you guys are so close, how come I never like heard about you? How come you never been here before? Like, and we're talking about brother and sister. Like, how come you never talked about Uncle Pietro before? You know what I mean? I feel like that was really the vibe of the kids because they're down, they're getting their day started, they're getting ready for Halloween, and they can't sit on the couch and play video games. Now they got to sit on the floor, like in front of the TV. So I really did think that was very interesting. And obviously, like we have to talk about the fact that this is not the same Pietro that we saw in in game in terms of not in game in Ultron in terms of how he looks on screen. So Sam, let's dive into that a little bit because you've been talking about Evan Peters since like episode 2 or 3.
Well, he doesn't have the accent. He doesn't have the bullets either, so it's great.
Right. That's interesting because I'm kind of still like on the fence about who this is. We have a whole theory section that we've added to the show this week. So we're gonna save our Pietro theories for the theory section that are so then as this scene kind of keeps going, basically it's Halloween, as Brent mentioned earlier. This is the Halloween special. So it's Halloween. It's the boys' first Halloween, even though they're 10 years old, because obviously they like aged themselves up like twice in the last episode. Um, and I think one of the biggest things was just like we got Wiccan, we got the classic Wiccan costume, but we also get the classic Scarlet Witch costume as a Sokovian fortune teller. We get the classic Vision costume as a Mexican wrestler. I guess that was the best they could come up with for that. It makes sense. The big cape, the collar, the mask, his face painted red. I guess could kind of be luchador esque.
Off the top rope, we have Vision.
Exactly. And I thought that was just like a really, I think that's one thing that like as a fan, as a Marvel fan, it just makes it so easy to love Marvel because they'll just be like, here you go. Like, I know we're real and we're gritty and Vision actually looks like a robot and he's got the like hexagon nanotech looking stuff. But you know what? We're gonna put him in this goofy red face, green body, yellow cape outfit just one time so everybody can see it. And we're actually smart enough to figure out a way to like make it work on screen. We're smart enough to figure out a way to like fit it into the story with like no complaints and not actually like disrespecting like your fans and your viewers and your customers. And that's not a shot at anybody who just had a trailer drop for their 4 hour cut the other day or anything like that. But, you know, he who shall not be named. That young product placement. Sponsor us, Funko. Send us some pops.
Requesting Vegeta and Bakugo ahead of time.
um, yeah. And then also speaking on retro costumes a little bit later, unexpectedly we get the Quicksilver retro silver bolt costume, which is, and even the hair, it's, it's just like, like you don't think things like that are gonna like affect you until you like see it on screen, and you're just like, it's like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme where you're like, they did it. So yeah, exactly. So I think, so this thing actually kind of closes out with Vision and Wanda not being on the same page, which is coming to be a very common theme on the show. Vision tells Wanda that he's actually scheduled to go out on neighborhood watch during Halloween. Wanda is upset by that because that's not, quote unquote, what he was supposed to. Then she stops herself and says, "You just didn't tell me that you had plans." So even Wanda kind of like looking at this, like, apparently there's a script and people are supposed to do things. And we saw in the last episode what happens when, like, like we've seen in previous episodes what happens when things off script happen. You get an edit. And then in the last episode, we didn't get an edit. We kind of just saw them kind of like working through it. And then in this episode, we actually see Wanda for the first time change what she's doing and allow Vision to have that freedom. So, what did you guys kind of think about the tension in that scene and, what was going on? Even down to Billy looking at the camera and being like, "Mommy and Daddy have been like fighting, or it's just been different since Uncle Pietro's been around." Yeah, he even
Like
says when he
testing the
gives her a
boundaries
kiss.
of what he can and can't do.
Yeah, he gives her a kiss on the cheek when he leaves and says, "Be good," which is not a greeting I don't think any of the married men here have given their wife upon leaving home. So, you know,
Not if you
unless,
want to
you know,
live.
depending on what they were going to do for the evening. Yeah. Yeah, he said it in the last episode.
And
And I think pushing the boundaries is a very, very like appropriate description for like Vision and his just mindset this entire episode.
And then, like,
So
the
that
funny
kind
thing
of
about that
go
was,
ahead.
like, not a Vision, Pietro was the one that enabled Vision to get away. Because as soon as, like, Wanda's like, no, 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 you're not going anywhere, Pietro sets up, hey, I'll be the fun dad for the night. He can go do his thing. I'll fill
I got
in.
an X and a Y, like that whole little X reference.
Yeah, I was just like, a little bit of a stretch for that joke, but
Will
like, hey.
that will one of Will's red strings just got wrapped around a thumbtack on the board with that one.
I want to see this grand masterpiece when it is completed.
I like these stretches. I do. I love them.
Okay, so that's inside the bubble. And I think, you know, as we go through this episode, we do a lot of jumping in and outside of the bubble because the narrative is very, very connected now. So this is the first time in the episode we go outside of the bubble and we're in the sword like kind of encampment in what I'm guessing would be like mission control, for lack of a better term, because that's where like the little big thing in the middle is and everybody looks down at the board and we're all standing around it and whatever. But yeah, yeah. So we're seeing in this scene, we see that there is a lot of friction in the camp because the last time we saw this camp, Director Hayward and Monica built this plan to send in a essentially a probe, and Hayward armed it without Monica knowing, and basically tried to blow Wanda up. And Wanda ended up dragging it out and throwing it at their feet, and basically just being like, "I ain't the one," essentially. Um, so they're kind of in a debriefing right now, and I'm assuming it's not too long after that scene happened. And there's, you know, conflict, and our three heroes, Darcy, Agent Wu, and Monica, basically versus Sword, because everybody who works for Sword is automatically going to be on Hayward's side because he's their superior officer, essentially. So, what did you guys think about? I'm gonna start with you, Will. What did you kind of think about like that conflict that we're seeing within the camp, within the Sword camp right now?
I think with the conflict, so with that, especially with the director, he's definitely he seems to be undercutting them at every turn and stuff like that. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's just talking about freaking the Avengers and stuff like that, and what they've accomplished. Is like no, but she was this and she's that and stuff like that. And she did this. Everything just points to him having an ulterior motive. And again, I can't put my finger on it yet. It's one of them loose threads and stuff like that, but I feel like he's up to something, but to be honest, I can't tell you if it's for for better or for worse.
Because it
Yeah, I
just
think
seems like he's
yeah,
got some level of like PTSD from what he mentioned in the scene of like, you weren't here. You didn't know
yeah,
what it was like after the blip. It's like he seems to have some sort of unnecessary tension towards superheroes, but you can't quite place why that would be. And there's no direct correlation, anything going on. Because like in Endgame, they made it seem like Natasha just took over for Shield and things ran smoothly. But the way he's recollecting things, it doesn't seem like those two branches were working together or working efficiently. Like some went wrong somewhere for Hayward.
Yeah, I mean, I think even deep diving that, right? I'm not exactly sure when Sword was established in the MCU, like officially, slash when Hayward would have started working for Sword. But obviously, like we know in the MCU, Shield was infiltrated by Hydra and basically taken down from the inside, essentially. Um, so there's already kind of like that whole, I think, natural distrust for being like a government agency in the age of heroes, because we've seen like basically our most trusted like covert government agency be infiltrated by Nazis. So I can understand why there would be some distrust there. I definitely like, picking up what you were talking about, where his exact quote was, all you people who left have no idea what it was like. Um, and I think, when you think about what Thanos's original plan was get rid of half the people. So instead of doubling the resources, get rid of half the people, which essentially will double the resources. But, obviously, like people lost spouses, people lost children, superheroes died, regular people like went away. And, there was probably a lot of actual chaos that happened in that fallout. I mean, imagine the scene that's happening at the end of Infinity War where Nick Fury and the Agent Hill, Anita Hill? No, not
Maria.
Anita Hill. That's a real person. Maria Hill. Sorry. Agent Hill. When they disappear and car cars are crashing, helicopters are going down. I mean, imagine that on a global scale, and the cleanup that would have to come after that, and then the depositions that would have to come after that of the heroes who were left, because yeah, it says Natasha like took over, but it didn't really seem like she was like working with like technically a government agency. It was kind of just like we just see her like talking to the different people like Rocket and Okoye and Captain Marvel in their different stations or whatever, and then Captain America hung up the shield. Like he wasn't going out doing hero stuff no more. He's leading like survivor like remorse meetings and trying to help people, with their mental health and not like beating people up and throwing the shield. So I could imagine if you were part of a government agency and something like this happens and Captain America decides to put down his shield, Hawkeye decides to go on a murderous rampage and kill like all the, Yakuza and triads and all, and the cartels and all that stuff like that. I mean, the world was probably in disarray. And if you're popping back and you're working the world like yesterday for you, the Avengers were like the baddest things on the planet, and you didn't have nothing to worry about. For the people who've been here for 5 years, the Avengers haven't meant nothing. So I understand why he probably don't want to hear about Captain Marvel or superpowered beings, because for him, he's probably like superpowers is a thing that caused this. Like, it, yeah, especially for two beings whose powers were given to them by Infinity Stones, and we know the Infinity Stones were at the root of basically like everything that went wrong. So I kind of get it, but I definitely agree with Will that like he seems to have some ulterior motives that as a superior officer he doesn't have to disclose to anyone, but like as a viewer, as people who were kind of put on the side of like Monica, Darcy, and Agent Wu, we're kind of just like, don't trust this man. Yeah. What were you about to say, Sam? Yeah. Right.
Twice.
Yeah. 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 And the first thing that she did when she got back was kidnap an entire town of people and take well no the first thing she did was break into his shit and take Vision and then kidnap an entire town.
Like, that's my robot. These are now my people. Anybody have any further questions?
Right. Well, and I also think that the important thing here is that Monica is justified in the way that she feels because she's the only person in that scene who's been inside the bubble. Like the guy who went in the beekeeper suit, I don't know what happened to him. He's either
He was
still
the
he,
ice cream man in one of the
but she
episodes
said,
afterwards, and then we haven't
oh,
seen him.
okay, so he's still in the bubble. So we don't know. So the only person who knows what or who has any idea of what the people inside the bubble are experiencing is Monica. The only people who have any idea of what Wanda's potential state of mind could possibly be is Monica. You know what I mean? Like, I think for me, I completely follow your logic 100% in terms of like his distrust. But once you start getting like evidence from your people, you know what I mean? And so now it's like, so do you just not trust Monica because you think she's different now because she got blipped? Like, do you think her being blipped means that you can't trust her anymore and like you can't trust her judgment? Because if that logic applies to Wanda, where this was just yesterday, the same logic applies to Monica Rambeau, where she got blipped and she just came right back. She doesn't have that like 5 years of distrust of superheroes, distrust of people with powers, because her, I mean, even though like apparently I guess her and Captain Marvel got beef that that isn't discussed, her her first interaction with the person with powers was her mom's best friend. So she is definitely gonna, I think, walk into these situations kind of, and her first situation dealing with like aliens and people who are very, very different from humans was helping refugees escape a war. So I think that her experiences as a child and her mother probably raising her in that way kind of definitely is shaping how she's interacting with Wanda and shaping how she's interacting with the situation. She says something very important, like Vision, like Wanda is the one who is causing this, and she has to be the solution. And I think that is something that's definitely I was in there and I know what she's doing to people. And I know that the only thing that's going to stop Wanda is Wanda. And so you can drop a bomb, you can send whatever you want to send. But as we can see, all it's going to do is make her mad. And all that's going to do is make our jobs that much harder. She's going to fortify the barrier even more. She can come out and take whatever drones we try to send, drop whatever bombs we try to send in there. She's just going to turn the bombs, and she turned the hell. You know, we saw what happened at the end of the episode. We'll get there. So, Brent, one last thing, and then
one last point, piggybacking off the great points you guys are making, is it kind of feels also like Hayward's being awfully personal with Monica, because someone who's going through grief of just processing her mom's death, for him to be throwing that in her face, like, that's not what your mom would say. Why are you being like this? You're disrespecting her memory, basically. Like, she just started processing this, and then she had to go into Westview and come back out. So she's been through the ringer already, and then throwing that in her face on top of it, it doesn't feel like a move of a director without some level
in front of everybody.
You guys are definitely onto something, that there's a certain level of personal animosity going on with everything.
Yeah. So so basically that scene ends with exactly what we all predicted. Get them off my base. And then our three heroes, you know, as Sam so eloquently put the pause on them and hotwire a Hummer or whatever.
Wu put the pause on him. First off, like he
shouts to Agent Wu.
So he did
Don't
that.
Let the smooth taste fool you.
Yeah, second, Agent Wu came in and was doing his thing.
You don't hotwire a Hummer, so like the Humvee.
I really enjoyed seeing that, just because like Agent Wu's character has been such like a punchline the entire like Marvel series, and it makes sense obviously like in Ant-Man, but like we're in this movie and it's just like part of me expected just like Monica to beat everybody up and Agent Wu be like, well, that was cool, but it was actually just like him starting it, and it's like, oh yeah, this dude's an FBI agent. They have to get trained in like basic hand-to-hand combat or whatever. He pushes a lot of pencils, but he'll push you too if you mess with him. So
he's not
I
a scrub.
that.
At the end of the day, Agent Wu is not a scrub, and it turns out, you know, he's actually a pretty sensible FBI. Like, he seems like a very capable FBI agent. You know what I'm saying? Like when they see him with the whiteboard, he's making out the list of questions. He's thinking, here are the things that we need to know. His process is very, very much the way it should be, and he's going about things the right way.
Like, we got to get that spinoff for Agent Wu. I saw an article today that's saying people at Marvel are, in fact, discussing that because they've seen how the internet has reacted to Wu.
It'd be so good.
Like, that could be something we could all love to break down.
And then Agent Wu and Darcy fall in love and
No one's taking Kat Dennings from me. I will bang this desk for that.
You're not in the MCU, Brent.
Or am I?
So we go back in the bubble, and the kids are out in the street trick-or-treating, just like we always saw on TV. Like, I say we saw on TV because my neighborhood ain't look like that on Halloween. If you was outside, you was trying not to get egged. That was all it was about. So,
I had one of those suburban neighborhoods that, you know, you would see. There were like a couple of neighborhoods right there in the same vicinity. So we had my neighborhood, the one across the street, and the two that were connected to that. And you could see people walking up and down the street, going house to house, toilet paper on somebody's tree in their front yard. But it was there. I always think it's interesting though that on television they always go trick or treating at like 3:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Like it's always
like
so
in my
bright.
neighborhood, it was like 6, 7 o'clock. As soon as it starts getting dark, that's when everybody's heading out. Like teenagers are breaking pumpkins, the kids are just trick or treating with the parents. Security's trying to harass people. That was the neighborhood I grew up in. Of that whole typical suburbs, I'm like, man, if that doesn't remind me of home, I don't know what does.
Yeah.
If nothing else, that's the scene we've grown up seeing.
Yeah, and so in this scene, obviously Wanda and Pietro are taking the kids trick or treating, and what you do when you haven't seen a family member in a long time, you start to reminisce. But this is interesting because Wanda is like, what was the name of that kid? Blah, blah, blah. And Pietro is like, you're testing me. And I thought that was really, really interesting because if Wanda's running this, why is she testing people? She seems, her being, like everybody else being confused by Pietro is fine to me. Her being confused by Pietro is the thing that I latched onto the most and the thing that I'm the most fascinated by. Sam, what were your kind of like thoughts on just like this whole dynamic between Wanda and Pietro, like with the trick-or-treating and that scene in particular?
So this was just another scenario where it kind of makes you really wonder, like, is this in fact the brother? Like, is this the real brother? Because like him recognizing that he's being quizzed to see if he knows this, he goes through an explanation of how he's there, why he's there, and is really genuinely trying to convince her who he is, and he's sticking to that. He never really answered the question, though.
Yeah.
And so it still kind of like leaves it open for interpretation because I did not get anything that I did not get sorry. I did not get anything that was very clear or definitive that would make me say, okay, yes, this is definitely the brother. And so it still leaves that, although it's building more towards the trust, and that's kind of what we're needing from this character, because that's what, again, we're talking about Wanda's expectations. And as you mentioned, you're latching on to the fact that she's confused by him being there. That's not part of the script. He fits a character arc. He has, that character's storyline exists. But this is off script right now. Him being there is off script. She clearly wasn't prepared for it because he's making changes. He's altering things. And it's moving her away from what she expects. And she's beginning to free herself up and allow a little bit more openness. Because I don't think that he makes a comment or two. He makes a couple of jokes about how he has to specifically do this and do that. And, like, he's the visiting brother and the character type that does da-da-da-da. But he's still checking to make sure that he meets her expectation. Even though she's not aware that she's given him his role, he's explaining to her what it is. And it just really makes you wonder, again, is he really the brother? And I think that scene kind of leads to the fact that it does. It does make you want to believe anyway, based on the scene, that he's the real brother.
Yeah. I think it even goes into... Oh, go ahead, Brent.
No,
go ahead, Brent.
Oh, okay.
No. Go.
Did we want to touch on the fact that when he was like starting to cause some basically anarchy with the kids, when he was starting to like smash pumpkins, silly string everybody, his direct phrase that he used was unleash hell, demon spawn, as if, because we know the kids were created from fragments of a character we'll get deeper into when we reach the theory part of this article.
I got that, Brent. Don't worry.
Okay.
Martha. Yeah, I like what I definitely like that. Actually, yeah, I like where you're going with that. for sure. I definitely like what you were saying too as well, Sam, because I think even him showing up, like when you watch a sitcom, the special guest star usually doesn't show up at the very end of the episode and then roll credits. That's not like a sitcom trope. That's that's like a drama or like a thriller or mystery show trope. You know what I mean?
Soap opera thing.
And so,
Stay tuned for
even
scenes from our next
and,
episode.
and even what Vision said when they were having the argument, when he was like, I'm not gonna go to bed so you can go upstairs and change this and redo this, and I come downstairs and like we're living in a whole new world. And it's like, sorry, Vision, that's exactly what the fuck you gonna do, because guess what? You came downstairs into a whole new show the next day. But I think Pietro showing up is part of the catalyst of why you have to choose a show like Malcolm in the Middle, and you can't choose a show like Friends or Frasier. I love Frasier, but like I don't think anybody would want to see a WandaVision Frasier like inspired episode where like
I don't know if she slicks her hair back.
Yeah, very Roz.
I mean,
So,
like,
yeah,
I didn't know I wanted
I-
a WandaVision like Malcolm in the Middle, and then they gave it to me, and I'm like, I kind of like
Yeah.
this. So
Yeah, no, I think it was great. I think it was a great like I think they're using so many things to like help the narrative, and there's just things on top of things where you can dive deep and like uncover them, or you can just watch it and enjoy it and not even like think twice about it. So the other big thing that happens in this scene is Wanda sees our old pal Herb the neighbor, who we remember, our black neighbor who was cutting through the wall, symbolism there maybe. He's on neighborhood watch duty, and Wanda goes up to him and is just like basically Wanda finds out that Vision ain't actually on neighborhood watch duty tonight. And so,
He lied.
yeah. And, three of us here are married. We all know that's no bueno. And it's definitely no bueno when your woman can do what Wanda can do. So I thought that was just like super, super interesting. In that we found out Vision can lie, and that Vision does have a little bit more autonomy than we thought, or Wanda is like allowing. And then we cut to Vision. So he's on the outskirts. So go ahead, Sam.
Right back to Herb. There was a conversation where Herb says, like when she asked for Vision, Herb says, "Did you want something? Did you need me to change something?" Again, he's going through everything that's happening, and of course it was a little comedic moment because he's taking the report on the walkie-talkie of everything that's happening. All the candy's gone, and we see Pietro running around taking all the candy. And the pumpkins are smashed, and then we see him like run around. He just smashed all the pumpkins. So calling these things out as they're done, gives us that insight to what's happening there. But Herb, upon his conversation with Wanda, is still trying to make sure he's meeting her expectations. It seemed like it was another one of those moments where, like, when Agnes was like, "Do you want to take it from the top?"
Yep.
It was a complete character break to check with the director to see if something needed to be changed.
Yep.
And it's very curious how when they are out of character, it is clear that they are out of character. And then when she becomes aware, and she, and it almost seems like Wanda always has this like confused look on her face for a moment. And then she kind of like shakes it off and goes back to her grin, and everything returns to normal every single time. Right down to her being, did you want me to change something? Is everything? And she's like, "Oh, no, that's fine." It's like, "All right, I gotta go." And like, so it's that expectation there. And the expectation seems to be more about her subconscious and less about how she's actively control, and I'm air quoting for those of you listening, how she's actively controlling people. And so I
Yeah.
think that is very interesting. And Herb was another clear example.
Well, I'm gonna come to you on this because the next scene we jump and we see what Vision is actually doing, and we see him just kind of like walking down the street, but it's dark where he is. People are kind of moving, not moving, and he catches this one couple out of his eye. The husband is in the back, and he's placing the jack-o'-lantern down, and then he's picking it back up. And the wife is putting a sheet up on the clothesline, and they're kind of both like stuck they almost are like the old Chuck E. Cheese or Showbiz Pizza like band, where they just like move in two different directions. And Vision was obviously clearly moved by this, and he focuses on the woman, and you see like the glory tear come down her face, and I think it was just kind of like, very interesting way of showing like the extent of her power. But I wanted to come to you, Will, and kind of get your thoughts on like that scene.
I think with this, it kind of works as in I kind of call it like a rolling thunder and stuff like that. So whatever area that Wanda's in and stuff like that, she has a radius around her that's active at all points in time. So as long as whatever's within that radius, like Vision's job is probably within that radius of her, the house, whatever. That's the stuff that's moving, and then it's gonna, again, like a video game, so that the stuff that's outside of it doesn't populate or start moving, so that until you get to that area. And I think that the stuff that's on the outskirts of her, so at that where it's active, it's just enough for them to be active, but just enough for them to be aware of what's going on. So their body is still doing certain movements, but again, with her shedding the tear and so at that, like there is that little bit of a break where like, oh my god, like I'm still like I'm trapped, I'm still doing this, and it's a pain that they can't shake, but they still their shell still has to do the movements of whatever as long as she starts moving towards that area. So somewhere in that realm.
And then we cut to commercial for Yo Magic, the snack for survivors. All the commercials thus far have been basically big old Easter eggs. So we're gonna go to our resident WandaVision Easter bunny, Brent, and tell us about, because I know you have some thoughts on that. So, and I think whoever else has thoughts, because I have like a little bit of a theory too. But Brent, yeah, what were your thoughts on like the Yo Magic snack commercial?
I thought, first of all, that it was a nice play on like yogurt, because that was the first time they finally like introduced that little lid. You have the yogurt and little cup thing. I thought that was cool. Easter bunny costume will not be included, but there's two different trains of thought that you go with on the commercial. For the first one, there's that kid that's starving on an island all by himself, minding his business. Shark comes up, offers him like, "Hey, you want this?" Kid spends the rest of his lifetime trying to get that lid off. For me, the lone island represents Vormir. The kid on the island is Red Skull. He's guarding the Soul Stone. He's just, you have to give up your life in order to get what you want. Kid wants yogurt. He can't have it. Red Skull says clearly, I found what I was looking for, but I cannot attain it, which would be a direct correlation to the yogurt. He's never able to get that lid off. So there's that one there. So that's the Soul Stone Easter egg, because each of the Easter eggs have laid out different stones throughout the MCU. Yep. And then there's the one that's a bit of a reach and kind of almost a theory in a way, is that the shark is Mephisto and that Wanda is the kid. And the shark is offering basically a monkey's paw deal. It's like, hey, I'll give you what you want, but there's going to be a twist to it. Kind of like you would do a deal with a genie, like in The Witcher, like everything goes haywire, not according to plan. There's there's a twist somewhere. So that's the other way of going with that one from me, anyway.
Oh, dope. Who else wants to jump in on that? Will, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in on that one. Again, this is gonna go into my stuff later on, but since we're at this part, I'm gonna go ahead and piece this together. It's specific that when they're talking stuff like that, you hear the, hey, the Yo Magic, and so they say snack on Yo Magic and stuff like that. That's a reference to me that can go both ways. Whereas somebody is feeding off of Wanda and stuff like that and using her powers and stuff to further something else, or Wanda is feeding off of someone else and stuff like that and allowing her powers to get, stronger or manifest more into whatever she's trying to do. So it's a two-way street and stuff like that. And again, when we get to theories, I'll elaborate a little bit more on that.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I actually have none for Yo Magic. That was I really liked hearing all of those. Those were very impressive, and I'm like, okay, okay.
Yeah,
Somebody,
I didn't
somebody
get
out
the
there.
Red Skull one at first, but I definitely think that that's interesting, especially because, you know, I think in the MCU, the only way to kind of bring somebody back is with the Soul Stone, essentially. And but in order to do that, you got to kill yourself or kill somebody who means something to you. So, I think, I agree with that theory though that the kid is a metaphor for Wanda, um, and the shark is somebody. It could be Mephisto, could be whoever else. It could just be her own conscience, like the like darker part of her conscience that's telling her to kind of reach deep into Yo Magic and come up with a solution. So even
Yo
like
in
Yo
Spanish
Magic
means
be
I.
yeah, and I mean Yo in black is short for your. So it could be
Yeah.
either way. Just be like use Yo Magic to make this better, and then just like the
She's
scene
got a
of
heavy
like the
accent.
kid,
Use your magic, like so.
yeah,
When she has an
the
accent.
scene of the because the thing to me was the scene of the kid trying to take the top off and not being able to get it off, and I really have kind of been looking at that in terms of kind of our grief theory we've been tossing around in terms of like your magic is not like the worst thing, like that would be like the worst commercial in the world in real life to like advertise a product that like the kid in the commercial never opens and gets to eat, and you show like the person like dying trying to get it open. So I saw it a lot more as like kind of a message, um and a state of a message into like the state of mind that Wanda's in right now, that she's trying to use her magic to like fix all these things. And like we're in this super chaotic episode where there's way more people who have autonomy than we're used to. And she's losing like control over Vision because in that moment she just found out that Vision lied to her. So maybe your magic ain't doing what you thought it was going to do, and it ain't creating the paradise, an island that you thought it was going to create. And maybe you're on this desert island by yourself, trying to create a paradise around you in a situation where you actually are stuck there, and you need to be looking more for a way
She's
off the
starved
island.
for affection.
Exactly. You should be looking for a way off the island, not something that's going to sustain you like while you're there. So that was my thoughts on the Yo Magic commercial.
Tight. That was pretty deep. I gotta give you that. That was pretty deep.
I
Because
like
I
that
I
one.
didn't I didn't catch that one
I
at
like that one.
all, and that
Could be
makes
wrong.
so much.
Could
I
be
mean,
wrong.
in either way, just became my head canon. So it's all good. That's what I'm sticking with till they tell me otherwise.
So then we come back from commercial, and Pietro and Wanda are kind of having a conversation. We kind of talked about this earlier. Sammy brought it up, where Pietro understands that he's in a sitcom, but unlike Vision, who is like kind of outraged by like what's happening around him and realizing that people are trapped, Pietro is just like, yeah, like I know what I'm supposed to be doing here. I come in, I do this, you do that. Hilarity ensues, chaos ensues, blah blah blah, whoop de whoop. And in that moment, Tommy gets his powers and he gets super speed. And Pietro is very excited about this. Obviously, like, you got kids, you see a kid do something like you, or you got nephews or nieces or whatever. It's always cool to see them pick up like on your interests. But Wanda her reaction was a little more like apprehensive. It was like another thing where she seemed like not to know that her kids were going to have powers and what the powers were going to be. And for somebody controlling everything that's going on, seems just like weird to keep encountering all these things where she's like, I didn't know this was going to happen. I didn't know if anybody else picked up on like her kind of apprehension, even her being like,
Oh no,
don't go past Ellis Avenue. You know what I mean?
caught
Be
that
careful and
automatically.
all that. Yeah.
For that one, and this is, I've kind of got a mental note here for when we get to spoilers, because after watching this episode a couple of times, I do feel a little bit differently. So I definitely want to go after Will goes through his theories, after Brent goes through the theories he has, just so that if they can convince me otherwise, it'll help me understand that maybe mine doesn't hold up the way I thought. But much like you said, this segment where Pietro and Wanda are talking, the very first thing that stood out was he was very happy because he was like, oh, you got powers, you know what I'm saying? You got the Maximoff. And I'm trying to remember if he says, like, you got the Maximoff gene, Maximoff blood, whatever it is. But ultimately, it comes back that stood out to me because in this particular universe, it wouldn't be their heritage or their bloodline that would give them powers. Because they're not mutants. They don't have a father who gave them powers.
They weren't allowed to be mutants because they weren't allowed to use the word mutants because Fox owned that word and said, you can use her,
however,
don't use that word.
Their powers were created from Loki's scepter.
Yeah.
Their powers were created from the Soul Stone, ultimately. As such, I don't know that there would necessarily be a gene, so to speak, or Maximoff blood. There would be no relation to him in that regard that would mean those powers would automatically flow to the kids for any reason. And then furthermore, let's say at best case scenario, these kids are half synthezoid. Right? So we won't even get into the dynamics of that part.
Well, I think about it like this. It's like I agree with your take on like the mutants and stuff, but even like kind of in the comics and in the Fox Marvel universe, the mutant gene is kind of more just like you just have the X gene, it activates. You don't necessarily know what powers you're gonna get. Sometimes, like Magneto, he got a bunch of kids. They all got a bunch of different powers. Pietro's got speed. The only one who has like similar powers to him that I could think of is Polaris, right? Like she can do the metal thing, and then we have Scarlet Witch who can do a little bit of everything. I'm gonna say that if the MCU is rooted in some form of like reality that we understand to a degree, that when they're like, I will accept that genetically, if your powers if you get powers activated in you through like the Soul Stone, your genes or something had to kind of be like rewritten, and you would probably pass it on to your kids. I'm gonna go to Brent, and then I'm gonna go to Will. Brent, go ahead.
The thing I wanted to touch upon was like Sam was saying that certain things were different, certain things were the same, more or less. But like if we're thinking comic wise, the Scarlet Witch is considered a Nexus being. She's basically the same person in every single multiverse. So that could be really interesting how they could tie in everything they have going around, how they move all the pieces as they may. We have no idea what they're going to do with them. But in our theory section, I'm sure someone will have very interesting points about what they got going on with that. But Wanda should remain the same Wanda throughout everything, as she is a Nexus being. She's a constant.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm
Will,
good with that part of it. Like, but specifically, and I guess if well, no, because Will has something. Let me hear what he has to say first.
Oh no, I was just more or less playing devil's advocate here for a little bit.
That's
It's
fine.
funny since we're everything,
Mephisto's
but
advocate.
you said it, not me. Anyway, more or less it's like that. We know that in the comics and stuff, she was originally cast as a mutant and stuff like that, and then that was later retconned through a series of events when she entered the MCU. So I was thinking stuff like that is they could play off again. It's Marvel's property; they can do whatever they want. They can play off of it. Freaking, if they want, they can play off the mutant angle just to bring in the X-Men and stuff like that. Because we know that the MCU is a separate entity. It doesn't have to follow the comics specifically. It doesn't even have to follow their own theory because they leave enough gaps to where they can fix something if they want. And I got to go back and read through the script dialogue and stuff like that. The twins' powers came from the stones and stuff like that. Now, did they come from the stones directly and stuff like that, or again, did they activate something? Because we know that the mutant gene usually activates in a time of distress or whatever the case may be. So if they were put under a lot of issues and stuff like that, that could be something that triggers it, which would essentially bring mutants into the picture if they wanted to use the word mutant and stuff like that. Because I'm gonna go back to something that we were talking about earlier off camera. We remember the tattoo that we were trying to figure out, something like that, with the on Pietro's arm. Freaking, if you watch it 6 minutes and 26 seconds and stuff like that, you'll see there's a tattoo on Pietro's arm. We wasn't sure if it was HOM or MOM. It does look to be more MOM after I reviewed a couple of screenshots more and more. Because at first it was like, oh, House of Mutants and stuff like that. But also looking at it, it could symbolize Multiverse of Madness. It could symbolize Mother of Mutants.
Ooh,
Like there's a couple of things in there that could, pop.
multiverse of madness. I missed
So
that.
freaking, I don't know which direction they're gonna go. Again, I'm just playing devil's advocate, kind of throwing stuff out there for people to kind of feed off and let them kind of take their own theories. But
Yeah,
that was
no, that's great. All right, so we're gonna move to the next scene. We go back outside the bubble, and our three heroes, after dispatching of their captors and dragging them into some random truck and just leaving them there, they're hacking back into the system, and they discover some things. We talked about Hayward earlier, and he is hiding stuff. He's found a way to see into the bubble that he didn't inform anybody on. So he has little dots and blips on everybody. He can track Vision, he can track Wanda, he can track pretty much everybody in the bubble. And that's kind of where we start getting to this place of we're getting inside the bubble and outside the bubble, because inside we see Vision has approached, kind of like gone further out towards the edge of town. He's found more people who kind of seem like they're in suspended animation, essentially. And even Agent Wu calls it out on the screen, where he's like, these people here, they're like barely moving. Are they even alive? And it's like, then we go in the bubble and we see Vision. And Vision's basically, it's like, all right, all these people are checked out. Screw this luchador costume. Let me go back to my real shit. And he floats up in the air above everybody. And what does he see but a car sitting at a stoplight with the blinker on? And obviously, I think,
I said, yeah, it's just sitting there, not moving.
yeah. But I also was, at first, I was like, why did he go to that car? And then I'm like, well, if that's their like best friend, he probably recognized it. And he goes down to the car, and here we have Agnes in a witch costume sitting at the light. What did you guys think about like seeing Agnes in this point, their kind of whole conversation? I'm gonna start with Will on that.
right. Agnes, we know Agnes, if you know from the comics of that, she's a witch. She's a mentor to Scarlet Witch. So her being there is something of significance to help guide Wanda, and we've seen that throughout the course of the show. I think with Agnes sitting at the stoplight and stuff like that, one or two things occur, because I'm gonna play duality with her as well. Is either she knows somewhat what she's doing. She kind of plays like she's just a little bit above where what's the guy's name? Freaking the black guy, freaking Herbert, so like that. Kind of plays kind of how he is, so like that. But she's a higher functioning version. Like when he breaks out, he's kind of got his little bit of freedoms with it. She's a higher functioning version of that. So she's got a little bit more free will. So I don't know if she was trying to escape to, do something and stuff like that to kind of warn or, figure a way out, stuff like that. Or was she up to something? Was she trying to necessarily, report back or, to whoever's running the show or whatever's going on? I don't know. It just seems like, I don't know. I think she could be playing both sides of the field here, stuff like that. She could have been initially there to kind of help Wanda and maybe, did something to kind of put herself in that situation to where she's kind of more spread out so she could, like, I think she knows that, the further out she is, less she's under Wanda's control. She noticed Vision is kind of, doing stuff. He's more aware and stuff like that. Maybe she's trying to talk to Vision and trying to let him know what's going on, trying to give him more clues, maybe trying to point him in the right direction. I don't know. There's a lot of things working here and stuff with her, but she's still so, for lack of a better word, cloudy that I can't really see which direction she's going. But again, she's and that's why I use the word cloudy, because she's kind of free floating. Like we don't really have a solid direction for her. She's just there.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the two things that stand out to me with the conversation, she's still on autopilot despite the fact that she is at the edge of the range. So much like Will was saying, I do believe she's much more capable. She's higher functioning. She's one of those characters, if you've ever played like an RPG, she's an actual story NPC. So if you see her anywhere, anytime in the game, you can always interact with that character. As opposed to this character where no matter how many times you talk, they're not going to interact with you. And so that was kind of what I noticed with, because he goes and he talks to one of the neighbors. He's talking to her, and he's like, is this your daughter? Is this your child? And never says a word, never says a thing. He sees the one lady who's kind of glitched with the curtain. This is Vision. He sees one lady who's kind of not the curtain, but it's like she's hanging up like a little ghost on a line, and she's just like repeating the same motion over and over and over. But here we are almost on the outskirts because we see the sign Ellis Street. And right after we had the whole chip off the old Maximoff block, I had to look it up. But right after we've had this conversation, Wanda, in her hesitation, is like, don't go past Ellis Drive or whatever. And this is where Agnes is, that exact spot. So it's crazy that the moment she has a concern about a location, that's where Agnes is. As we'd seen previously, every time she needs something, every time she has to have something, Agnes is always the fixer. Agnes is always the one, Johnny on the spot with everything that's needed right when it's needed.
The quest item.
Right. And so here she's like, don't go to Ellis Drive. Boom. She's at Ellis Drive. And now the flip side of that coin, she was kind of on autopilot. She was rambling, muttering. She's like, how did I get out here? Must have made a wrong turn. He's like, you made a wrong turn in the place that you grew up.
Rip it.
He unlocks her. And then, of course, she comes to, and she's a real person. And we get that moment that we kind of saw when she was talking with Herb at that time. But what's weird is if he just unlocked her, that means that time before, she would have still been Agnes in character, not unlocked Agnes. And if that's the case, then that means that every once in a while they try to overwrite they try to go off script on their own. When she and Herb were sitting there at the fence and was like, well, Geraldine, where's she from? She doesn't have a home, da-da-da-da-da. Probably not the conversation she was supposed to be having with Vision. And then when Herb gets ready to say something, she's like, don't say anything. And she's like, okay, well, I'm off. My wife pointed out she didn't have her brooch for the first time. She's got on her costume, but we can't. If she has her brooch on, it's under. We still see her move her hand up, but the brooch is not there now. And if you go back and watch,
like they were trying to draw attention that she wasn't wearing it this time.
Bingo. But if she was actually unlocked, And she's like, am I dead? And he's like, why would you think you're dead? She's like, because you are. And he looks shocked. And she's like, you're dead. You're dead. You're dead. Like, why was she saying it that way? It was almost the same way as the one woman who was like, stop it. Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it. So I really like Will's idea that she's
Still playing around.
still playing around. And it feels as though
She's almost like Vision's tour guide, almost. Like anytime Vision starts going off the rails, she shows up and is like kind of keeps pushing him further out of it.
Right, exactly what Vision needs at the moment. He needs to be able to unlock, like, it's kind of like, well, I don't want to use that theory because that's another theory, but basically, if Vision feels like something is off, something is wrong, Wanda has to give him something to discover. If he can discover this, then she can keep it enclosed and handle it and manage it. So what if his unlocking people isn't really unlocking people? Because he can like lock them back in. What is it he's doing that's freeing them? And if that's the case, why wouldn't she then leave? Why would she sit there, waste time talking to Vision as opposed to getting the hell out of there? If she's finally unlocked and consciously aware that she's unlocked and that none of this is happening anymore, that was just one of those moments to me that it made me, like I said, I've had some theories. After watching this episode a couple times, I've kind of started rethinking all of my theories. So I want to get to that part. But those were the things that really stood out to me in that moment.
Yeah, y'all messed my hell head up because I had a whole different idea about that conversation. Because like my thing was this, I was ready to just be like, she ain't no witch. She's just another person in the town. But she was cast as the person who always comes over and gets what they need because shows have that. And so if there's a script, she could show up with the dinner. She could show up with the doghouse because she has the script. And she's doing like what she's supposed. She has like the script, which is like basically Wanda controlling her.
Wanda's like, expectations. That's what I call the script.
Exactly. And so for me, like I was putting like things together. Like Brent, you brought up that she had naughty on the back of her pants, and then I picked up on the fact that she's in the theme song, but not in the title card for the show, which is really weird because if you're going to have a title card for the show that shows the whole family, you probably wouldn't put her in on the title card with the two boys at that when her name is like revealed too. So I would expect her to be like on the title card throughout the episode. And then that naughty kept jumping out at me. And I was thinking about like the last, and I just kept being like, why would they put naughty if she's been so helpful this entire time? And like, yeah, she's like spunky and she's like a firecracker, but like naughty, that word seemed very specific. And then I was trying to connect it to like her being at that light. I just automatically assumed like, yeah, she's trying to leave and she got as far as she could go. But if she, and my whole thing was like, maybe she's not a witch because if she had as much control over herself as like Vision had, she would be able to just leave because at no point did Vision slow down. And then when you think about Tommy and Billy, they both have full autonomy. So if they didn't, she wouldn't have to tell them not to go past Ellis Avenue because they would just slow down and stop the further they got away from Wanda. So I took it as very much at face value, but then I was kind of thinking about like when Vision unlocked the other dude in the office, and he was like, he was very aware of what was happening to him. Monica was very aware of what was happening to her in the bubble while it was happening. It was like sleep paralysis, where like you're awake, but you can't move your body. and except to the next level because now somebody's like moving your body for you. When she woke up, she's like, "Am I dead?" And it's just like, now I'm looking at that and I'm like, you would know if you were dead because you've been inside your body this whole time, and you would know that Wanda's like suppressing all this stuff, yada yada yada. Now, and then when Vision relocked her back in, she didn't just stay stuck. She U-turned and turned back around. So did something in that conversation because if something in that conversation with Vision would have unlocked her, when Vision was asking the lady, "Is that your child?" that should have kind of maybe like sparked her as well, maybe. But then it may be the thing of,
I think what you're saying is if it was Vision's interaction with her, she would have
right.
unlocked at the time, like Will was saying, that load screen. It seems the load screen only works for Wanda.
Yeah.
And so Vision having a conversation with Agnes, if he tapped her to unlock her, when he locked her back, she should have gone back to the state she was in at the time of being locked back in.
Well, she wouldn't. She like if she was truly just like a person in the town, I think when he walked up to the car and he was like, "What are you doing?" or whatever, she wouldn't have said nothing because she was at the edge, and so she would have had the least autonomy possible based on like what we had already seen from the path that Vision had been taking. So I actually don't know what to think about that scene anymore. I thought I had it figured out to a degree, but it could be either way.
Well, I won't go too much more into the autonomy, but I feel like she is a character who already has
a definitive impact on everything that's going on.
Well,
whatever
more script. Like she's not an extra; she's a cast member.
Right.
Norm is a cast member. Herb is a cast member. As such, we're going to see their names in the credits every time, and they are written to be this character. It's not woman hanging ghost. It's not woman with child. It's Agnes. Yeah. And because it's Agnes, we know what, like, even as the viewers at home in real life, we know what to expect when it comes to Agnes. Or like we thought we knew what to expect. And that's where we
and everybody else is just extras.
Right.
So like if an actor walked up to an extra in the middle of a scene and said something, the extra probably wouldn't say anything back. But if you went up to like a cast member or even like a recurring character like Norm or Herb, where they're not in every episode, but you know, we recognize you, Lieutenant Murtaugh. We recognize you, you know, all the friends of like Malcolm in the Middle's like friends and his friend's dad,
the
and
one
like
little
you know
kid in
the people who exactly
always
exactly exactly we just like we know who you are, and if something happened in the scene, like you could like improvise and maybe say something back just because you have that experience. Okay, cool. So then anybody else have anything about that scene? Because like Vision then soldiers on after
basically, it just feels like Agnes showed up exactly where she was supposed to for Vision's journey, and like her job was to further push him outside of Westview, try and test the boundaries of what Vision is really capable of in fighting what's going on. And then, as Sam was saying, she should have just relocked right back at that current point with no knowledge of that conversation. Instead, she does that Yui that he talked about, and she's cackling away like, you know, the Wicked Witch of the West, and she's just having the time of her life. Like, everything's going exactly the way she wanted it to, which prior to being locked or unlocked, that was not her state of mind. So either she accomplished exactly what she set out to do, or she had a weird glitch in the system with everything that's going on.
I thought she had a psychotic break at first, but now I'm like, I don't trust this lady. So then we go back outside the bubble. Monica is talking to her guy who can get her back inside the bubble. And then that's when we have like kind of the revelation that her cells have been rewritten by entering and exiting the bubble, or the hex, as Darcy coined on the show. So I think that kind of goes back to some things we were talking about before. I know, Will, you were talking on the last episode a lot about the Easter eggs with like photon spectrum, etc. We kind of talked about the scans and her needing to redo the scans and all that stuff like that. Well, Hayward has the scans. Oh shit, I just put this together. If Hayward hates superpowered beings and he saw those scans, he probably has a theory that she has powers and he don't trust her. Damn, I'm good, y'all.
For once, I was waiting for you to catch up.
Will's like, I've been here.
That's my one. That's my one. That's the only one I'm gonna get for the rest of the
That's when Will then pulls the curtain and shows like the rest of the blackboard with all the like, other red strings.
And it is like he definitely has a chip on his shoulder as far as the superheroes, and he did kind of seem to turn on her, and there would be a reason that he suddenly turned on her, because a moment ago he was kind of like bringing her in. You know, we're gonna get you back up there. We can't put you. I got to keep you grounded for now, but you know, I got a mission for you. Got something for you to do. You know, we miss your mom. Great to have you back, kid. And then all of a sudden, it's like, get her out of my sight.
Yeah, but she's determined to help Wanda. So this is where our team kind of like splits up. Darcy stays because she's trying to track down more files that Hayward's hiding, and Wu and Monica go to meet her guy about a plane or a boat or whatever they're going to go meet. So
vehicle that will get them in.
Exactly. So then we go back inside the bubble, and this is, I think, probably where the biggest meat of the episode happens in terms of dialogue, answering, creating questions. And this is like kind of the pumpkin patch conversation between Pietro and Wanda. I think they've kind of moved into this place where Wanda is not testing him anymore. She's kind of just like accepting, like, all right, like this reality is getting crazy and random things are happening, but I still kind of have it under control. And I think the interesting thing about it is Pietro is curious about what's going on, but when you contrast that with how Vision has asked, like, what's going on, Vision sounds concerned, and Pietro sounds fascinated and excited. Brent, like, how did you feel about that, like, pumpkin patch scene? Like, what were some of the things you noticed? Did you find any Easter eggs, anything in there? Because there's a lot going on right there.
The Easter egg that jumped out to me was the movie theater sign in the back. There was 2 movies that they specifically mentioned, and both of them were owned by Disney. So once again, Disney doing Disney, making sure you reference other things that they've already done. The 2 movies were Parent Trap and The Incredibles. The Incredibles, about a superpowered family like in the early 2000s, which fits exactly with the time frame of what WandaVision's currently at, and she has a superpowered family. Then on top of that, the Parent Trap, if the one I'm going off of would be the Lindsay Lohan twin version, where the twins are trying to keep the family together, which is what Billy and Tommy are working on. They're trying to keep their parents together as they're clearly going off on a different path.
Yeah. The Haley Atwell version is basically the same movie, just a long time ago. I thought that was definitely interesting. Will, I know you had something.
Oh yeah, no, I was just looking at it because I mean, you keep reference to not only everything that Brent said, but the other part of it that I was looking at, Parent Trap, because their parents are literally trapped in freaking, what's going on here and stuff like that. Whether Wanda created the trap or anyone else with that, they're trapped with that. And then the Incredibles, which is the Incredibles 1, which you think about freaking the Fantastic Fours, 4 superheroes, 4 stuff. So again, a little bit of my string theory, just letting me play around with it. But
Dad goes off on his own. Mom has to go save Dad. Kids using their powers for the first time in combat situation or whatever. I see that.
Wow, that Incredibles reference is actually pretty great for what happened in that episode. Love it. Love it.
Yeah, because there
Yeah,
is an
Brent.
addendum to that point. Because, like, if you think about the Incredibles plot line, the whole villain of the Incredibles movie is a dude who's mad at superheroes because they didn't do their job.
I want
Hayward.
everybody to see my bug
Welcome.
eyes when he said that. That was the light bulb going off in my head.
Welcome.
Thank you, Will. I was
Welcome.
like, I had part of a theory, but then you just connected all the pieces. I'm like, this makes too
Was
much
that,
sense.
you know what? Will's hit us with a couple of hammers. Brent, you get a hammer too. Good job.
It'll be fluffy with bunny ears on it.
Man, come
He,
on.
look, he can take Mjolnir. I'll sit here with Stormbreaker. You know, he can have a little one.
What's the alternative version of Thor? Beta Ray Bill.
Yeah.
I'll settle for that.
And keep in mind, Nick Fury, Samuel L. Jackson was in The Incredibles. So just, you know,
Honey, where is my super suit?
And The Incredibles is set in a world where, like, it's basically
Heroes.
they have their own Sokovian Accord in The Incredibles too. So, you know,
Why does this
band
analogy keep getting
heroes.
deeper?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. These people are
I
geniuses.
think I'd be crazy. I'd be sitting over here thinking about shit.
Now, I will say that at literally, as of the conversation at the pumpkin patch, I am going to sit silently till we get to theories, because everything else for me in this episode is directly related to my new theory.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest things that happened in the pumpkin patch conversation was that obviously we talked about Pietro being fascinated and Wanda kind of being shocked because she says, "You don't think it's wrong?" And he's like, "No, I'm impressed by how you did all this stuff." And so I'm wondering,
Adding
like,
more credibility to the fact that he knew she had powers before and did not know the
Yeah.
limitations of her powers then. This would be
Yep.
his first time seeing her use her powers differently than he recalled.
for sure. And I think it does also kind of fit into like what we remember about this Quicksilver in this universe, because he was the one that was very much just like, yeah, I want to use my powers. I want to show off what I can do. He was very flashy. You know, bet you didn't see that coming. Obviously, like that one ended up getting the best of him. But, you know, call back to like a bunch of other very funny situations. This is the cocky, like headstrong, cocksure, like I'm faster than everybody Pietro in this universe that a lot of
He
us
even
are
had the
probably a little more
seashell
used to seeing
necklace
in
on.
comics.
Did you notice that?
Yeah, for sure.
He was totally a dude, bro. Like,
But Wanda in this scene kind of actually lets us in on a secret that she doesn't know how this started. You know what I mean? She kind of is just like, I just was feeling sad as fuck, and then I woke up in a Dick Van Dyke show. You know what I mean? So I found that to be really, really fascinating because, you know, it goes to what Monica's theory is that, like, you know, she basically said in front of everybody, like, she's not out for like world domination. She's not doing this with maliciousness. You know, she's feeling grief and she's somehow manifesting this as like a coping mechanism with that. So anybody have anything else they want to talk about in that particular scene? Because we're kind of jumping back and forth as we get to the end of the episode. It's like we jump out, Darcy finds a file called Cataract, which I know people have theories about that. So
Cataract
we can talk
vision,
about that in
makes
theories.
sense. Yeah.
Exactly. But then we get, you know, kind of another powerful scene of Vision getting to the barrier, obviously realizing that it's a barrier and starting to like push his way out. And
More self-sacrifice from Vision.
Yep. The soldiers show up on the outside of the bubble, but inside the bubble, we get Billy starting to hear Vision's voice, starting to like see things, and we see his powers beginning to unlock. So now we have two kids with superpowers that we knew they were going to get superpowers, but obviously, like inside the bubble, this was clearly like unexpected. Darcy gets caught trying to help Vision, and then inside the bubble, Wanda is really, really focusing and trying to help Billy figure out where Vision is. And we get a really, really like crazy scene between her and Pietro where he makes like kind of a slick comment. He says, "Not like your dead husband can die twice." And Wanda turns around and blasts the shit out of him, like across the pumpkin patch. She freezes everything. And as we see Vision kind of like leaving the bubble, crumbling, pieces of him flying off back into the bubble and him kind of being redismantled.
Because he fell down exactly as he did in Endgame. Same
Exactly.
lay down.
Disassemble.
Wanda then, to me, and this was unexpected, Wanda freezes everybody, floats up, and expands the bubble. And then we get this really great chase scene where we actually see, like, we've seen like things going into the bubble, but we start seeing like how this bubble was not created, but how this bubble can move and manipulate. The bubble expands, everybody's making a mad dash, people are running away. Darcy gets caught up in the bubble, so she gets changed as the bubble wave washes over her. The sword encampment turns into a carnival. All the officers turn into clowns, which I felt like was a very, very like funny like dig at those soldiers. Go ahead, Will.
No, the joke earlier when Darcy was in the car and she was riding, she's like, "Oh, it's a bunch of clowns in here." That's a freaking reference. Like, that's a straight reference that everybody turned to fucking clowns. That's a comeback. I love it.
Yo, that's dope. Yeah, and so at the end of the episode, basically, Director Hayward and the people in the car with him and Monica and Agent Wu in a different car are the only ones that we see left outside the bubble as it expands. And then roll credits. So anybody want to talk about just like specifically that theme before we go into theories? Because I know everybody's chomping at the bit to get into theories.
I could add something there.
All right, go. Wait, hold on. Brent, you go first, then Sam. And then
Sam started talking.
Around.
Hit it up, and then I'll follow.
Really small, and this is kind of a question, but we saw credits roll. Do we just have to assume that the bubble stopped expanding when she opened her eyes? Because we did not see it stop moving on screen.
Inception, WandaVision version.
Yeah, it could be one of two things. Either the bubble stopped when she opened her eyes, or when she enveloped everything, she realized something or something.
She enveloped what she needed to, maybe.
Something
it
came in.
moved out until she got to Vision. It moved past that. It continued to move past Vision. Hayward's in the car. The vehicle's running down the street. The bubble is still going, still going, still going. We cut back to Wanda. She opens her eyes. Her eyes are glowing red. Credits. So it's
open-ended. It's just open-ended.
Right. And I just feel that is important and relative to
because we don't know what happened. We don't know what happened to Darcy. We don't even know if Darcy transformed to what capacity. Like, we know nothing. So it's all open-ended at this point, and
she's
it's
gonna
just
be a broke
speculation.
girl. That's
Yo, if she's in a broke girl's outfit, like working the carnival type shit, freaking, I'm as like a concession.
Merry Christmas to me.
That would be good. That would be hilarious.
The only thing I had to add on was I the only one of the four of us that was like, after credits rolled, after everything finished, your ass was still glued to your chair, just what the hell just happened?
Yeah, I was still stuck there. Like, I probably sat there for about 20 minutes. My son done drove Hot Wheels over my fucking skull and everything. I didn't care. I was trying to process.
I literally watched the episode 2 times, back to back.
Same. I immediately watched it.
I haven't done that with any of the other episodes. This episode, finished it, got up, got a drink, sat back down, watched it again. From the beginning.
Yeah.
Which is a huge 180 considering how almost unwatchable the first 2 episodes were.
Not letting that go, huh?
No, I just want to keep reiterating that I was wrong, just so everyone knows that I am a man of my word. When I say, hey, I was wrong about something, I'll be the first one to step on that little soapbox and yell it from the mountains.
Cool.
Chicken.
Exactly.
We got something coming in March.
Chicken.
I'm looking for that one too.
Chicken.
All right, so obviously super deep dive because there's a lot going on in that episode. Now we're at our theories portion. So some of the stuff we kind of had talked about, Pietro theories, Agnes theories, anything else, theories about Yo Magic. Will, let's start with you. You can get Mr. Theory Man, and then we'll roll around. Oh, Sam, did you have something before we get into that?
I was just going to say we are, for those of you listening, we are right at the 2 hour mark. We're 1 hour 52 minutes. We are going to put a second cut exclusively for the theories. We're going to do it. We're going to get it out the way. But I think we've covered the majority of this show. We've gone beginning of the show to the end credits. If there's anything else that I think we need to cover specifically here, like maybe what questions we have, and we could maybe even just do theories as a standalone, because there's a lot that we can do with theories. And so with our normal formula, maybe we close this part out just saying like, hey, what do you want answered in the next one? Because like I want to know what happens to Darcy. That's the very first thing I got to know.
Yeah.
But like we could probably discuss what things there, and we'll just do a WandaVision theories video. We could just do a separate show altogether just on that, and that will keep us from having to
overflow, because this theories thing is going to go last a while.
Yeah, I feel like theories is going to be pretty big.
I don't even have any theories, and I know it's going to last a while, and I'll just piggyback off what the three of you guys have to say. Try and come up with some.
Yeah, I mean, I'm down for whatever everybody wants to do.
My only question is, how are they going to, like, if the next episode isn't Modern Family themed, I'd be a little disappointed. That's my next guess for where they go with sitcom trope, but we'll see what they do overall.
I mean, I feel like the sitcom shit might be over.
We're definitely heading that direction. As far as like the various questions, I think we have 3 episodes remaining, and still have a good bit of information to unpack.
Yeah.
And if they give us 3 episodes like we just got, they can do it. They can close this thing out. The questions I have, they're a little bit larger in scope. The simple things are like, what's going to happen.
But like,
with
okay,
Darcy,
so
who's
yeah, I was
gonna
going to say,
like,
I was going to say for the next questions, it might be easier to keep it at like, what do you want answered in episode 7, as opposed to like big questions about the whole show, because then I think
those
a little more
digestible. Get more into that theory conversation. So,
I got it right here. Questions you want by the next show? I got it. I can look.
What you got?
What happened to Darcy?
Yep.
Who is Woo's mystery guy?
Yep.
Who the fuck is the engineer? That's all I want to know.
Yeah.
Them right there.
And I think we're right at the point where they can answer those questions. We have to get the engineer, because that's who they're technically going to meet, right? So it feels like episode 7, we're gonna have the engineer. So that's gonna tell me a lot moving forward, right? Could maybe possibly tell me a lot moving forward. And then Agent Woo's mystery guy, like the person he initially came out here for it. So we get those. I'm good. And I think that'll make for a great episode 7.
Brent, episode 7, questions you need answers to.
Are we gonna get 2 broke girls, Darcy? Like that for me would be it. And then I want a Modern Family trope, but like as you were saying, that may have ended because they've already hit early 2000s. So I don't know if they really want to unpack the 2010s, but we'll
but they can
discuss
go
it
Modern
further.
Family, Blackish, some of those types of family sitcoms. I think that could definitely work. I think my question,
go with Blackish, that might not play
well,
out too well.
Herb will be in Blackish. Everybody else will be a Modern Family.
There you go.
I think my questions are going to be mostly around still Pietro and like who he is. And I think in this next episode, because the last thing we saw was him get blasted by Wanda. So how's he going to react to that? and what's going to happen there. And then my other question is, now that Vision is back inside a larger bubble, how's he going to react? And then my other question is the kids, because Vision and Wanda got to have some kind of come to Jesus. Like, he's seen he's in a bubble. He's seen he's trapped. And now he knows his kids are trapped too. He doesn't even know if they're real. How's Vision going to respond to the kids? How, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm very curious to see, like, I'm mostly curious to see, like, what kind of state of mind Vision's going to be in when he wakes up and sees Wanda for the first time. If she's going to, like, zap him and erase his memory, like, how are they going to handle Vision being back inside the bubble? Okay, so I think that's it. That's going to wrap up our recap episode. I want to send a big shout out to all of our panelists here. Big shout out to our group on Facebook. Again, I'm not sure which QR code it is, but one of them takes you to the Facebook group. The other one takes you to the YouTube page.
For those of you watching, the one on this side here, the one on the top left is going to take you to the YouTube. The one on the top right will take you to, this one is the Facebook, that one is the YouTube. So top left is the Facebook group, top right is the YouTube channel. And of course, you can find us Anchor, and we'll have you know what? I'll get a QR code made up for that, and we'll have that. We'll just have a screen with all the QR codes.
And if you're liking on YouTube, make sure you smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, and hit that bell for a notification so you can get new episodes of Grown A Geek content when it launches. For Brent, Will, Sam, I'm Jeffrey. I've been your host. Thank you for rocking with us this evening, and we will see you for episode 7 recap. Peace.